Good afternoon, Yaba. How are you today? I wonder how many of you, before I started speaking, checked your mobile phones. We are living in a very interesting world. Some people, like me, are not completely awake until I reach out for my mobile phone. Because I work for an international company, a lot of time is spent trying to connect with different parts of the world. But it's a very, very powerful, very changing technology that we're dealing with. And I want to illustrate that with some slides. Firstly, this picture. Some of the things that are interesting about this picture is what has happened to our social environment. Children on the dining table or wherever we're eating are plugged and completely connected to their digital device. Lovers holding each other and looking over each other's shoulders at their mobile phones. Do you recognize any of these things? It is the world we live in. And I actually discovered a word. I didn't know the word existed. It's called fobbing. Have you come across that word? So what they're doing is called fobbing, phone snubbing. We are engaged totally, all the time, with the digital device, changing our world, developing new words, tweeting, trending, and illustrating a new way of life. Think about it. These are the figures. Around the world, nearly 7.6 million people. But about half of that, a bit over half of that, are internet users. More challenging is the social media. We all connect on social media incessantly. And interestingly enough, often mobilely. We are connecting at times where we normally would be engaged socially. I was born years before mobile technology. And I remember a time where when you wanted to use a phone, if you were a child, you could not touch a phone because there was padlock on the phone system. You had to tap it to connect with it. Or more interestingly, across the world, at least for us here in Nigeria, you had to book a phone call, an international phone call, for about a week before you could make the phone call. The world has changed, fundamentally. Let's look at the African continent. Not too different. A continent that is usually called poor, a continent that is usually last. We are connected deeply and across the board. If you look at the figures, you can see the penetration of internet users. Nearly 40% of us are internet users across the continent. Many of us are social media engaged. And perhaps more interestingly, most of our connections is by mobile phones. A mobile phone for us is not just a phone. Sometimes it's your bank. Sometimes it's your hospital. Often your library. So we are connected in incredible ways. I'd like to share the story here back to Nigeria and try to look at the depth of which we are connected and the effect of that connection. If you look at the Facebook numbers, about 26 million active users. If you connect that with your WhatsApp, how many of you are connected on WhatsApp? I know I'm connected across WhatsApp in many groups. Many of us, about 50 million of us will be connected for Facebook and WhatsApp alone. But more interestingly, look at how many people voted on Big Brother Naija. 170 million votes. Can anybody hazard a guess how many people voted at the last presidential elections? Just a fraction of the numbers that you have up there. We are in a fundamentally different world. We are participating deeply across social media. We are participating deeply across digital space, but we're not participating as much of it. Think about it. Hallelujah Challenge, which I also connected with. Yes, I'm a digital person. Hallelujah Challenge has had more people connected than most churches. On a Sunday, churches are sometimes lucky to have 100 people attend. Not the big ones, the regular ones. And then the world connected with our concerns. Our concerns for the girls that were kidnapped and taken away. And at least I still pray for them. that those who have not been returned should return. But not only did we connect, even the First Lady of the United States connected with us. We've left imprints across the internet. We've left imprints across social media. We have connected incessantly and powerfully. But I want to ask you a question. How many of us are intentional in that connection? How many of us are not just reacting in that connection? The world has changed, yes. But in what ways has it changed us fundamentally? As a Nigerian, I think a lot about who we are, where we're going. So I want to ask you a question. When you connect on the internet, do you realize that you're leaving a footprint? When you realize you're leaving a footprint, do you realize how that footprint is being utilized? Some of you know this better than I. You're leaving cookies. Artificial intelligence is gathering a profile about you. New commodities are being sold to you and you're buying them. You are leaving footprints that have significance in the moment. But the reason why I wanted to speak to you today was that you're leaving footprints for the future as well. You're telling future generations who you are. Think about it. The profile you leave online is the first time in the world that this amount of people will be able to document who they are to future generations. So for me, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren would know me by what I do online. How many of you react to someone who irritated you online and posted something nasty to them? How many of you have said things that you didn't really think about that might be bigoted or tribalist? How many of you have reacted emotively, responding to issues that you saw online? That record defines you. I can't get away from this because one of my grandchildren started searching online. Unlike me, and in my own time as a child, my great-grandfather, who I met alive, used to tell me stories of the most profound ancestor we had in Ibadan. For me, it was a big deal, and it's probably influenced my entire life. But for him, having said that, he starts fact-checking his parents. So I'm being fact-checked all the time. Granddad, did you do this? Did you do that? The reality for Fiyifolua is that he can define us by what he sees online. He knew about TED before his parents did. So the question to you is, do you want to be defined accidentally? Do you want to be defined by your last expression online? Are you going to be proud that future generation can assess you based on the footprints you left online? Have you ever asked yourself these questions? There are many of you who think, I'm too young to be thinking about this. But believe me, time passed quickly. I can tell you about that. Because many of my own parents died young, or both my parents died young. I started gathering things for my children very early on. Cassette tapes, ticket stubs, books. Now they're all of no consequence. Because what you leave for future generations is not the material that you have accumulated. It's not your faster car or your bigger house. If you can leave it for even one generation, you're lucky. What future generations are going to want for you is a better world, possibly a better Nigeria, a more engaged world. And so my question to you is, what kind of ancestor do you want to be? One that lives a better world? Ones that live an improved world? Ones that make things better for the future generations? And also at the same time, ask you, oftentimes when we talk about ancestors, we talk about the men, we don't talk about the women. You are going to be that ancestor, whether male or female, that's going to be documented, so you can't hide. We're talking about climate change. We're talking about profound changes. Imagine that when Mungo Park came to Nigeria, those ancestors were able to document and tweet and say, we saw a white guy down the river the other day. We're here. You're also going to be making history. For the first time, people like you and I, who might not be otherwise known, will be well known. And to that, I started speaking to my friends, and we set up a website. It's called akind.org. We started looking at you being an intentional ancestor, taking on the challenge of making the world better. At least once a month, ask yourself what kind of ancestor you want to be. Taking on the challenge of climate change, taking on the challenge of young girls who have not reached puberty, getting married, taking on the challenge of a better Nigeria for future generations, and taking on yourself so that you can build a community of practice that makes a difference for future generations. Let me tell you this, whether you like it or not, you're already in the office of the ancestor. And the office of the ancestor is a leadership office. And whether you like it or not, you are being documented as an ancestor. So you have a choice. Be an ancestor, and be an ancestor that's special. Be a kind ancestor, one that is driven by love and impassioned by purpose. Be an ancestor that makes a change for future generations. I want to tell you, be ancestor kind, be a great ancestor. Thank you very much.